I'm Aaron France, and let's talk about Stealing the Throne. It's flown under the radar a bit, but this small, unassuming zine packs a big punch. In fact, Stealing the Throne might be my favourite tabletop role-playing game ever. But I can't help but feel a little bit conflicted about it. Let's start at the beginning. Pacific Rim, Megazords, Transformers, giant robots are just cool, and Stealing the Throne is all about, well, stealing one. It's not about goblins, it's not about dungeons unless they happen to house a mech, and it's certainly not about dragons unless they have one you can steal. The only thing this game is about is heisting yourself your very own mech. How? Well, it happens in 3 easy steps, and let's speedrun it. Step 1 is figure out what you're stealing. You and up to 4 other friends take turns imagining the mech you're going to steal. You'll give it a name, invent a place to steal the mech from, craft a backstory for the mech, and come up with reasons why you're stealing it. Perhaps the mech is called Furious Doom, and you decide it's got the last map piece to find a forgotten star system rumoured to have enough fuel to help your failing people survive the lean years. Something like that. You'll also come up with visual flourishes, weapons, and other characteristics of the mech that fall into its backstory. Maybe if it's got that map piece, it's got a navigational computer. Or maybe the mech has rockets. Maybe your mech has a fist the size of a skyscraper. Maybe it's got an antimatter drive that turns back time. All of these things get written down, and you'll need them later in step 3, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. On to step 2. Step 2 is steal that mech. During the heist, you and your friends will rotate between roles. One person takes on the role of a temporary kind of game master. They set the scene and present challenges to overcome. Another person takes on the role of a thief and will use their cunning, their wit, and their ingenuity to roleplay their way past the presented obstacles, attempting to evade capture and death. Of course, if that fails, they can always betray their crew, aka you. But enough of that. On to step 3. Time to get away with the mech. After each player has taken a turn acting out their part of the heist, it's time to get away. You power up the mech, and then you take turns to describe a tense, high-action moment during your escape. And each player gets their do-or-die moment in an attempt to escape the mech and their life. That's it. We're done. Speedrun over. That's the structure of the game. 1 mech heist in no more than a couple of hours. So let's dig in a little bit deeper and look at what stealing the mech looks like. So before this, like I've already said, you've written down what you're stealing, where you're stealing it from, and why. And then to kick off the heist part of the game, each player is dealt 3 playing cards from a standard 52 card deck. These cards are kept secret. This hand of cards is used to resolve the action when it becomes unclear whether you might succeed or fail. This hand needs to last you the entirety of the game. These cards are a precious resource, your lifeline to making it out alive. You'll use 1 card to attempt your part of the heist, then another during the getaway. If you've got 1 going spare, you can use it to help power up the mech, aiding in your escape during the getaway, or to help a failing thief, but we'll get to that later. Alongside being dealt your cards, at this point you set the starting alert level. It represents how at large you are. It starts at 1 with you undetected, but as you blunder and as you draw attention to yourself, the scale of the resistance you meet ratchets up and the difficulty increases with it. The heist is played over a series of rounds, and you'll take turns swapping roles until each player plays both the thief and the throne. The thief is the player who attempts to infiltrate and overcome some of the defenses guarding the mech, and the throne is the role who takes on the mantle as a kind of game master, setting up obstacles, narrating the scene, role-playing other characters, etc. Everyone plays as both once. All remaining players in each round play as backup characters who can assist either the throne or the thief when asked. To start the round, the throne player presents an obstacle to the thief. Perhaps the thief needs to gain access to a secure mining facility guarded by life-detecting robots. Maybe the thieves find themselves in a city knowing the mech sits somewhere beneath their feet, in the bowels of the city, but so far they've been unable to locate it. The higher the alert level, the tougher the obstacle that's presented. Whatever challenge is posed, it's then up to the thief to introduce themselves and inject themselves into the situation. This is my favourite part of the game because it's a simple, fun twist on characters in role-playing games. You introduce your character only whilst the heist is underway. You carefully plan the backstory of the mech you're stealing, not the character you're playing. It's only after a complication arises that your character is put in the centre stage. They didn't even exist until there was a problem to solve, and the game gives you a formula for introducing them, one that makes them immediately relevant and competent. You don't need to worry about the fact that you spent 2 hours building out a woodsman and then the action's all in the desert. The game takes care of that, prevents that from happening. The formula the game gives you to introduce yourself is, this is what I'm here for. I'm blank, and I'm a master of blank. This is what I'm here for. I'm Joe Bang, and I'm master of explosives. Or I'm Star-Lord, and I'm a master of dance. I'm not sure if this mechanic is original to this game or not, but it's certainly the first time I've seen it, and I love it. Once the thief has introduced themselves, they then describe how they try to overcome the obstacle, whilst the throne throws in minor complications and roleplay as characters. Deliberately, both the thief and the throne need to stop the back and forth of roleplay short of resolving the situation. Instead, they need to drive towards a pivotal moment, the dramatic moment when the classic question is posed: can this thief get away with it? For instance, will the thief be able to slide under the laser grid to steal the keycard needed to access the vault? Or do they get caught in it instead, alerting the guards? Will the thief be able to extract the information they need from the informant? Will they be too slow, and will the guards catch on? At this pivotal moment, the action is resolved by comparing cards. If the thief can play a card from their hand that's higher than the throne's highest card, they succeed. The throne, the player has been presenting obstacles to the thief this round, doesn't use any of the cards in their hand. Those are only used when you're playing as the thief. Instead, at the start of the round, they then deal one of the cards from the top of the deck face up. And then they deal additional cards equal to the alert level face down. Those are the cards the thief is going up against, and with all but one of the cards hidden, choosing the card to play as the thief becomes a bit of a gamble. And crucially, as the alert level increases, so does the chance of failure for the next part of the heist. At the start of the game, the thief only goes up against two cards, one card face up and one card face down. If the thieves end up in a lot of trouble, making the alert level increase, then towards the end of the heist, the thief might find themselves going up against 3 or 4 face down cards. Difficult odds. Back to resolving that pivotal moment. The thief, whilst only seeing one face-up card, must choose which of the cards in their hand to play. The then remaining face-down throne cards are flipped in a kind of poker-like reveal. If, as the thief, your card is highest, well then you succeeded, and you get to describe how you succeed. If not, well then shit has hit the metaphorical fan. The alert level increments, making it trickier for the thieves going forward, and the throne then describes how the situation escalates. Perhaps as you attempt to sneak into the inner sanctum in your disguise, a hidden security system activates. Or instead, perhaps a rival group of thieves is a hair faster than you and sneaks inside the sanctum, locking you on the wrong side of the door. However, as the situation escalates, as the thief, you have some options. Firstly, they can ask for help from one of the backup players. A backup player can play one of the cards from their hand to help out, adding the value of their card to the thief's. If the combined value then exceeds the throne's highest card, then the backup player gets to narrate how their intervention helps the thief and saves them from the escalating situation. The thief can also choose to take the nuclear option and decide to go out in a blaze of glory, sacrificing themselves, whether that's captured or killed, to overcome the obstacle in front of them and reduce the alert level. Finally, the thief can decide to betray their crew. In this instance, the thief waltzes past the obstacle with surprising ease. They can even take a card from the thrown set of cards and add it to their own hand. The catch, though, is that in the next section of the game, the Getaway, this player must betray the rest of the players and reveal it's a double cross. They were working for the other side all along. That's the heist. Take turns as a thief, introduce yourself, roleplay till a pivotal moment, and then play your cards right. And see if you can succeed. If you can't, ask for help. Go out in a blaze of glory or betray your crew. Whichever you do, it's your choice, and it'll push the story forward in an interesting way. Once everyone's had their moment to shine during the heist, then it's time for the Getaway. The Getaway plays a lot like the heist. Instead of trying to get to the mech, it's time to break out in the mech. You've managed to breach the mech's defenses and have hijacked it. Now in the Getaway, all you need to do is fire up the mech systems and get away. This is where the details and flavor you created at the beginning of the game during the planning stage comes to life. Anyone who survived the heist and has 2 cards left in their hand can choose to use one of the cards to power up one of the previously described mech details to activate that specific subsistence. For instance, you might choose to put a 7 from your hand on the index card corresponding to the gravity-lapsing torpedo guns to power them up. Now you can use those gravity-lapsing torpedo guns in your escape. Once everyone who wants to has powered up part of the mech, one by one the surviving players then describe a slice of the action that occurs during the escape sequence. And again, at the climax of that moment, you play a card against the throne. Except this time, if you've woven one of the throne's powered up systems into your narration, you can use that subsystem's value to add to your card. For instance, if you've used the gravity-lapsing torpedo guns in your escape, you can add the 7 card you put on there earlier to add to the 5 you just played to give you a total of 12. And if your combined value is lower or equal to the throne's, well, you get to go out with a bang and get to narrate how your part of the story ends. Otherwise, you're in the clear. You've made it. Your character will get to survive the heist in one piece. Traitors, players who made the decision to betray their crew during the heist, have their own mechanics to play with. They get to interrupt the narration of any thief to add a twist to the dramatic situation by revealing their treachery, and then they add one of the cards in their hand to the thrown set of cards. The narration then swaps back to the thief to see how they attempt to navigate the complication, see if they can overcome the extra difficulty. If at the end of it, at least one thief managed to beat the throne during the getaway, then congratulations, you've stolen a mech, and the game has a few suggestions for how to wrap up the session and leave it on a satisfying note. And then you're done. That's it. If you like the sound of the game and you're interested in giving it a go, then there are a few things I think you should know. First, we haven't talked about playsets. At the back of the book, there are a few pre-made thrones that come with some art and a bunch of tables and prompts to inspire you. The purpose of these is not to change the gameplay of Stealing the Throne, but to rather give a theme to your heist. You can use them as much or as little as you want. Secondly, Stealing the Throne does a fantastic job making itself accessible to players that are, let's say, inexperienced with role-playing games. The language it uses is approachable, and it makes specific note about getting the tone right for the session, using tools to ensure everyone has a good time, and it manages to spell out it's not a game you win. Stealing the Throne also comes with some high-quality examples of play, so you can see what a session looks like if you've never really taken part in a role-playing game before, or if you're unsure how Stealing the Throne is meant to operate. Stealing the Throne is not just approachable for inexperienced players either. Unlike other more traditional tabletop RPGs, this is a game that's easy to just pull out and play. It doesn't require someone to go away and spend hours preparing to run a session. This is a game where you can sit down with a few friends, and after a couple of hours, you've all had a good time. Almost all of the work of generating the adventure is done right there in front of you. It's part of the game and it's fun. Honestly, this is just a good game. As I said at the top, this is perhaps my favourite role-playing game. That said, I do have a couple of minor gripes. Maybe it's because I'm being a little bit picky, because I like this game so much, but there are a couple of things that I feel need to spell out. Firstly, because of the fact that you rotate the role of the throne, you're effectively sharing the burden of being a game master, and everyone is equally exposed to the difficulty of that job. If you're someone that's uncomfortable coming with things on the spot, or who dislikes the pressure of setting the scene, setting the tone of the game, there's no way to avoid it in this game. In other more traditional games, in this kind of situation, you just not nominate yourself for that role. Here, there's no getting away from it, and that by itself could be a deal breaker for you or your group. Secondly, whilst I really enjoy the concept or the idea of a pivotal moment, that point that you're trying to get to before you reveal your cards, I think it's hard to get your head around as a player. When you're in the moment, I think there's a natural instinct to try and role play to the full extent of everything, rather than using the cards to resolve the scene. I think this is especially true for newer players. I've seen this tendency to overshoot that pivotal moment, and as a result, you can end up with a lot of back and forth as yet another problem gets introduced to a scene so that the scene can be wrapped up with a card reveal. Stealing the Throne needs that pivotal moment and that moment of card resolution for the game to function. And when you get there in a way that feels forced, it sucks the air out of the game and it can make it feel a little bit flat. Thirdly, this game is so approachable, it almost feels like it could be playing sight unseen, that you could just pull this off the shelf, never having read it before, and play the game. The thing is, it's so close to that. You can get away with it for sure, but there's just a few things that aren't quite explained well enough to make that a satisfying experience. The layout of the zine means that callouts around tone, the explanation of the betrayal mechanic, and a couple of other things aren't sequenced in a way that lends itself to being a great, truly sight unseen game. Instead, for the best time, you need someone to go away, read it, and then teach it. Other than that, the game hits the bottled heist experience right on the head. It gets out of the way of itself enough to let the story shine, and in terms of simplicity, you can teach this to basically anyone. Just be sure to coach people through that idea of a pivotal moment. If you've got a group that you feel could lean into the fiction side of this game, then it's naturally going to be a high-octane, cinematic-style experience, and it's going to produce the kind of memorable sessions that role-playing games are all about. This is one of my favourite games, and I fully recommend it. It gets the Aaron seal of approval. If you're still listening, go ahead and hit all the YouTube buttons beneath this video, and I'll see you next time.